Well, hello, everyone. Thanks again so much for joining on this midweek Bible study as we're going through the book of Ruth. Again, I appreciate everyone who listens and pray that you glean something that will be encouraging to you, something that will help you in your walk with God, that just help you draw closer to Him. That's the main purpose of all of this. So thanks again for uh, taking the time to listen and allowing me just to teach from my heart on some of these very dear topics. So, we are in the book of Ruth, chapter 4, kind of getting near the end where everything's culminating here. And we pick up in verse 4, and you can see it on the screen here. I'll read it just so you get a flavor for how it sounds. Ve'ani amarti egle Oznecha Lemor. So this is Boaz talking, and he's speaking in the gate, um, and he's speaking to the uh, people who are gathered there. Remember, business takes place in the gates of the city. The prominent people are gathered there, and he begins to lay out his case for the redemption of the land from Naomi and Elimelech's family, and starts to talk about this. And he uses some very interesting words. The first word that he uses here is osnecha, and it's translated as you. But when we open that word up, it's really the word for ozen, which is an ear in Hebrew. So it's really strange that the translators will they'll change it to become um, Americanized, if you will, or Westernized. And so what we see here is he's obviously speaking to these people, but he's using some metaphoric terms that are more common in the Middle East than what we would um, have here. He's talking about not just speaking to them, but speaking to their ears. And we can see that in the commentary here by Samson Raphael Hirsch, that he translates this that I should reveal this matter to your ears. Again, very poetic. And that's what we have to remember is that the Hebrew scriptures are not written in a scientific manner. That's why it's so difficult to use them for scientific basis of trying to prove things like we in our Western minds, want mathematical equations and scientific data to be able to stand upon points and prove things that happen in nature and happen in time. And as we look at the Hebrew, I'm finding more and more that the Hebrew scriptures are poetry. They are written from a relational and a relationship standpoint, not from a knowledge gaining standpoint. And that is challenging for me. I think it's pretty much a um, Western culture that we have been influenced by science, and we've been influenced by those terms that we want everything to be black or white, yes or no, add up to a perfect equation, and get our answers and put to rest any doubts we may have or any unsurety. Um, that does not work in the Bible, in the Hebrew scriptures. They are poetry. So there's a lot of allegories, there's a lot of suggestions, there's flowery poetic language that is lost when it's translated into English. And so he's speaking to the ears. And why would he talk like that? I mean, obviously, people have to hear, but again, it's the Middle Eastern culture, looking at um, the poeticness of it, and they're trying to create this relationship, trying to plead his case and soften the heart, soften the mind, soften the spirit by using words that draw them together. And that's what some of this language does. So I think it's pretty fascinating. He's speaking to their ears. And then again, the Lemor saying, kana or kane, buy it back. And then he uses another word that's very interesting, and this is the word neged. And it's translated in the presence of, but again, it's has quite a broad amount of understanding or translations possible. It can mean in the front of, in the sight of, or opposite to. And this word has been one that when I read it, it immediately triggered some things inside of me because I have been studying this word based upon what's found in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18 is where I first came across this. And so we're going to go there and just take a look at that word. Um, and look how it was used. And I'm sure as I read this, it'll become more familiar to you. This is where in the Garden of Eden, God has created Adam, and He has not yet created Eve. And so He makes a statement here: "It is not good for a man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable." So again, in the King James translation, I will make a helpmeet for him. I have heard this topic preached upon from using just the English words. In many different ways, depending upon it can be explained depending upon how the person's view is on women versus men. And of course, knowing that the King James version of the Bible was written in was created, excuse me, in 1611. The position of women at that time is very different than what it is today, and we find studying the Hebrew is very different than what the original Hebrew was portraying. And this is where we get an understanding of is what is God's thoughts of men and women. Obviously, women are created in God's image. That's when you have to wrap your head around that a little bit, and that every emotion that a woman has come from God, which means it's God's emotion. And it's sometimes interesting to think about that because we normally only think of God in masculine terms as to how our emotions as a male, I'll say personally here, my emotions play out and look at God strictly through that lens. But a woman has every right to look at God as being created in God's image, and that every emotion, every feeling, every mood she has is given to her by God, was given to her by God. And we sometimes see that in the scriptures where God reacts in ways that are, challenging for us to understand unless we look at it in this broader aspect that all these emotions that we have as people, men and women, are contained in this essence of God as a spirit. And so again, it's very, very interesting. And that even being created in the image of God is an interesting topic that, every facial recognition, every face that was ever created and ever will be created are all in the image of God. In fact, there is a ancient Jewish story about a rabbi that was going through the city and came across a very humble, poor man who was walking along, and this man was somewhat misshapen in his face. And the rabbi looked at him and just commented, "But how did you get so ugly? Is everybody in your town as ugly as you are?" And this man stopped and said, "Well, I don't know, but if you want to know why I'm so ugly, go and talk to my maker who created me in such a way." And his response, of course, caused the rabbi to feel shame. The rabbi got off his animal and fell before this man and asked for forgiveness because he realized that from what we may deem as the most handsome to what we may deem as to the least attractive are all created in the image of God, and they express His who He is. And so everyone together is just a beautiful collage or a mosaic of the face of God. And sometimes helpful, at least for me, to think about that as I view people and to not make uh, impressions or judgments or have thoughts of maybe prejudice just because how a person appears on the outside, that all of them are formed in the image of God. And in fact, this was part of the basis of when Jesus was tempted by the religious leaders about whether to pay taxes or not. And he responds to them saying, "Show me a coin." And the uh, Pharisee pulls a coin out, which the coin that he had the image of Caesar on it. Now, the underlying story behind this is it was illegal for a religious person to carry around a coin that contained the image of a ruler because in those days Caesar was heralded by himself and by those that surrounded him as being divine, as being a god. And so for the Pharisee to carry this coin around was actually carrying a graven image. And that's what added just more um, interest to this discussion because here the priest pulls out this coin that had Caesar's image on it, which was the image of a pagan god in those times. And of course, the priests were forbidden to do that. And so Jesus, of course, responds, give unto Caesar the things that are Caesar and give unto God the things that are God's. But the moral behind that, or the summary behind that story, is all of us are created in the image of God. We are, in a sense, his coins, minted in his image. And yet every one of us has a uniqueness to himself, herself, but yet we all have the image of God that we are formed in. And the intent there is that we are to give ourselves unto God because we are his coins. And as coins were used in those days to um, basically establish the realm of the kingdom. The coins were only good in the land that the king was ruling over, the emperor was ruling over. And yet here we are created in his image, filling the earth from one corner or one pole to the other pole and east to the west, which is defining the territory of our sovereign Lord, that we are his coins, if you will. We are minted in his image with the intention of giving back to him what is made in his image. And just a beautiful metaphor there that uh, I thought I'd bring out, but it has to do with this neged, this suitable helper. And what we find here is that God created Eve to not be a slave or a suitable helper, but to be someone who would be opposite to him. Opposite not in a physical sense, but in a way to help develop and to challenge and to be someone that was in front of them. Kind of like, you always wonder, we use the term opposites attract, and we see it in relationships. And this is actually by God's design that we would be able to grow in a relationship because of this um, attracting of opposites, if you will, of not being, what growth would there be if you're never challenged? What kind of learning would you have if everything that you ever did was just always accepted? You never were taught anything new. You never learned anything from another person's viewpoint. And that's why God is saying it's not good for a man to just get his way all the time. It's not good for a man just to have his own viewpoint. He needs someone who's suitable and ezer, someone, and that's also a very interesting word, a help, but someone who is bringing another um, point of view, someone opposed to, someone again, you can see the beauty of the verses here, that this word can mean opposed to, but also one who's helping. And it means that depending upon the situation, sometimes a person needs to be challenged in what they are thinking. Sometimes they need to hear another point of view. And I believe this is where this word comes in so beautifully, that we only grow when we are challenged. We only grow when we have to learn another person's point of view and derive benefit from it, not just to do it out of spite or out of because we have to, but to really gain an understanding of the heart of that person. And, why do they think the way they do? Why do they believe the way they do? Why are they taking this position? Um, Help me to really put myself in their shoes and to learn why they're going through this and why they're feeling this way. This is in God's realm the perfect idea of a relationship, to help each other grow, to help make each other better. And that was the purpose of what God did here, and it's brought out so beautifully in this word, neged. And so, getting back to our story before my long detour here, is that this time in the city gate was not always a time of agreement. It was a time where debates took place, and this word neged would bring that out, that some of these debates must have gotten very heated. Just really interesting that it's just translated so simply in our English translation. It doesn't bring out the depth that there were some discussions that took place here in the city gate. There were people who no one was going to agree. You got a group of guys, people together who are charged with making the decisions. There's going to be someone who's not agreeing. There's going to be someone who is bringing out another point of view. And this word neged um, covers this here in this saying. And so he says that v'neged zikne, the elders, my people, im tikal and Gaal, so talk about redeeming it. And so this is where the whole story comes to fit in, of bringing forth the proposition of Naomi's land, and now partially Ruth's because of her return. And this needs to be redeemed. And there is this person who is the rightful person in line to do the redeeming. And it goes back and forth here, talking about, are you going to do this? And are you going to redeem it or not? And if you don't, I will. And we're kind of running out of time, so I'm going to leave some of this because there's some kind of really neat things in here. You see, as I'm circling with my cursor, you see the Hebrew words that are in, some are in brackets and some are in parentheses. And we're going to go into that next time and just look at, well, what does that mean? And we've done this before a little bit. It's called what is written and what is understood. And there are Hebrew words that have passed from our knowledge and the knowledge of the translators. And so they put in what they felt is the correct word. And we never see this in our English translations, but when we look at it in the Hebrew, we see the words that are left there because they didn't want to change it. They just added the word that they felt was the more relevant in how they understood it. But sometimes we can gain a little bit of knowledge from this, and especially in this part here where Boaz is talking, and he really wants to be the kinsman redeemer, and he's trying to convince this other guy to step out of the way. And so these verses, certain words here are just very, very interesting. So we're going to pick up on that next week. I hope you're enjoying that. Hope you enjoy the little story that goes along with it, and just see the beauty of looking at these Hebrew words and how they can truly help us in our relationship with God, and learn more about what His intentions and His heart is for us as we serve Him. So God bless you all, and have a great week, and see you next time. Bye bye.